Hello, everybody. This is Demetris Curry. Hello, everyone. This is amazing. Great day to you guys. This is Demetris Curry coming from you Fridays. Financially Fit Fridays has been an amazing platform to talk to people about what is going on in their lives of finances and trying to figure out where they are and where they're trying to be in the next step of the features of their lives. But this is the one thing that's been very interesting. Over the last 3 years, we've gotten a lot of requests and a lot of calls and text messages about, listen, Miss Curry, bring back the Financially Fit Fridays because some of those topics that you talked about was so important to us and what we're trying to do in our financial buildup of our businesses and of our homes. So we heard you. We heard you loud and clear. And so we're so excited to bring that back to you starting right now on this very first segment of Financially Fit Fridays and to bring what? An expert in the field of financial literacy. Today, we're focusing on that living revocable trust, whether you really do need a trust, wills and trust, and the distinction between the two. And also, we're going to talk about businesses and how to cover your interest in those entities. So, I got to tell you about this special guest, Mr. Mo Daka. I get tickled every time I say his name because what they say, hey, how do you say his last name? Listen, I'm going to get that right one day. But I have Mo here with us, right? Mo has been one of the most important collaborations that we have done since we started in 2023 with the Financially Fit Fridays. And so, with that YouTube channel and with that particular segment, we said we're going to start over fresh and bring the first guest, Mr. Mo Daka, on the line, who is not only a attorney in the real estate game, but also was a litigation attorney as well. Okay. So his background of being one of the top attorneys in the nation is just amazing to have him here, have his relationship, have his collaborative partnership. And so we're excited to bring that to you today. And so before I even go any further, that I want to bring him on so he can say hello and we can have this conversation about why this is so important for you as a business owner, as a person that's over your family, a head of household, maybe as a parent or a grandparent that's trying to leave a legacy to their children. And I want to make sure that we talked about some real conversation. We're going to pull back the layers today. So without further ado, I want to bring on Mr. Mo Daka. Mo, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and you're too sweet. That was too nice of an introduction about me. I'm not as cool as you just made me out to be, but I'm happy to be on here. I'm honored that I'm on the first episode back and excited to work with you guys again and give as much knowledge as I can to everybody.
Yes. I'm so excited that you're here and thank you for taking out this time truly to be with us. We also have streaming with us a few of our colleagues are looking on. I'm going to close them out so you can just see us too. There you go. We have a few of our colleagues that jump on. But Mo, let's dig into it. Can we dig into it?
Yeah, I'm here. You ask me whatever questions you want. I'm excited about the topic. I think it's a topic that's not taught at schools. It's not taught at universities. People oftentimes, go their whole lives without learning this knowledge. So it's very, very nice of you to be able to give this to everybody and everybody
Yeah.
listening. Tune into Demetrius because she's doing great things.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about the mistakes.
Sure.
Let's talk about the mistakes that people are making in trying to figure out what to do, and planning for a retirement. Okay. Um, as we work with clients on a day-to-day basis, a lot of times they come in with the already perception of all they need is a will. Okay. And it's because of what they're seeing on different medias, and possibly, maybe they've gotten some bad advice over the years. Um, what are you seeing out here in this industry, and with the way things are going right now in this economic climate? How do we prevent our listeners and our people from making those very mistakes, and then it's too late to fix it once they're gone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most people think a will alone is enough. A will alone is almost always a one-way ticket to what we call the probate courts. And the probate courts are where your loved ones have to go when you pass away to be able to gain access to your assets. So dead people can't own assets, unfortunately. So when we pass away, whatever assets we have, the hope is that we get it to our loved ones, and we get it to our loved ones when we want it to go to our loved ones. So we'll talk about that in a second as well.
Yeah.
And, most people are taught, get a will is enough. All a will is doing is deciding who gets your items. Because if you pass away and you have no will or no estate plan whatsoever, the state's intestacy laws decide where that goes for you. And most of the law that surrounds the passing away of people and the migration of assets to your loved ones relies on the intent of the person that passed away. And that's why when you die and you have no estate plan, they call it dying intestate. And the state decides what your intent should or would have reasonably been. But with a will, you decide where it goes, but you still have to go through court, and the court has to probate that will. The smart thing to do is to set up a trust. And most people set up what's called a revocable living trust. And then not only do you decide where those assets go, but if you've properly funded that trust, your loved ones don't have to go through that court process. They don't have to go through probate. They don't have to hire an attorney, spend all of that money and that time going through that process. And the sad reality is most people think having a trust is only for the super rich, because out there in the media, you hear trust fund baby. And it's like, well, I got to be so rich to have a trust. No, in most states, if you have over $100,000 of net worth, in some states it's quite a bit less. Some states it's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of net worth. You trigger the probate threshold. This includes the equity in your home. So Demetris, most people we know now have over $100,000 of equity in their home, and they are, people who trigger that probate threshold. And if they don't plan appropriately for their loved ones, those loved ones do have to go through probate. And
Mhm.
the other thing I tell people is it's very important for your families to get your assets when you want them to get them. I use my oldest son as the example. I got three boys. I got a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 1-year-old. Very opposite ends of the need spectrum, right?
Mhm.
My 16-year-old Tanner is the sweetest of my three kids. And we don't know if my 1-year-old is going to be sweet, but the monster right now, and Tanner's very sweet. But Tanner's the spendiest, right? You give him $1, he'll try to spend two. You give him two, he tries to spend five. If I pass away tomorrow and I don't have a proper trust with safeguards in place to make sure he gets his money over a course of time,
Yeah.
well, when he gets the money at 16, 17, 18 years old, he's going to spend it on a red Ferrari, a bass boat, a truck to pull his boat with because he likes cars, he likes to fish, and he's a young kid that's, still immature when it comes to his finances.
Right.
And I've created safety nets within my trust so that the money stays invested for him. He gets it at the right time. That way he doesn't lose and waste all the money that I worked so hard to get. Your viewers and anybody listening, you worked really hard for your money. And you've worked your butt off to make that money, and you've gone to work every day, and you've created wealth for yourself that you want to leave that legacy behind for your loved ones. You don't just want to leave it behind and allow that to go to waste. You want it to go to good use to better our loved ones' lives. And to do that the right way, you need a properly set up estate plan.
Right, right. And you touched on so much in that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
touched on so much of that. But it definitely makes a big difference, right? So what do you say to the people that have had the mistraining that, okay, I don't really need one right now. I can wait too much later on, or possibly I have a business and they just don't know that there's some coverings that they need to do.
Yeah. So here's the thing I tell people who say, I'll wait. I've been blessed to be a part of a lot of estate planning files. I'm the president and chief legal counsel of a digital estate planning company that works in all 50 states. So I oversee over 25,000 files. And I'll tell everybody, we don't know when we're going to pass away. And by being privileged enough to be a part of that many estate plans and then several thousand real estate transactions as well, people die at all different times. I have a client who's 103 years old and he's still alive, right? God bless him. He's my record. But last week on the platform, we had somebody in their 50s pass away. We just never know when we're going to pass away. And the reality is you can put it off till you can't. And if you're a business owner, it's even more important to make sure that you properly structure your businesses in your estate plan. Because the reality is if you're an independent business owner, you might not have a succession plan for your business, and your business requires you to have left some guidance for the next people, some ideas of how the business should be run. Obviously, if you have multiple partners and you have a very successful business, you've hopefully already created operating agreements and structures in place to allow for some succession. But even in those scenarios, if you haven't assigned those membership shares to an estate plan, then you've worked really hard so that your business partners can continue to get rich. You haven't worked hard so that that hard work goes to your loved ones. Because I love my business partners. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. Truly, I do. Both my business partners stood up at my wedding. I love them to death. And if I pass away, I want them to continue to be successful. But I'm working for my family first and foremost, right? So even in the businesses that I currently have, we've set up very smart structures that, if one of us passes away, the companies have insurance on us and we pay out our heirs. That money goes to the estate that goes to my kids. Because at the end of the day, I want my 3 boys and my wife to be able to be taken care of when I'm gone.
Right. Right.
Not everybody out. I want my business to continue forward and I want them to be successful, my employees to be good. But I don't want my family cut out of it. So business owners really need to think about that. And we handle business owners a little bit differently depending on what their business is. Sometimes you're a sole proprietor and we have one set of needs and we look at that. And sometimes you're a big business and we have to talk to your partners and you about how do we make sure that not just the business moves forward, but that what you've worked really hard to build can still benefit your loved ones. And that's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that we've learned when we're working with you and things like that, when we make our phone calls and say, hey, we are working with this new client, they have 5 LLCs, right? And we want to make sure that they are covering properly. The mirroring effect of making sure that they have the information inside of their operating agreement and their everything else that they put in there mirrors what we put on the living revocable trust as well, so that both of them are sort of like mirroring each other. That's so important to have. And so that's one of the things that has been one of the forefront questions that we get quite a bit here in the office of whether we should or should not make some changes to our original paperwork, right? To the original paperwork. And so that's an addendum to put in there so that if you have children, for instance, my son, just like you just said, we want to make sure that that interest goes to the trust for my portion of the ownership, where it passes down to him later on in life, or have the ability to be able to sell that off through the trust and sell that off to the other owner of the trust. How important is that? How important is that?
It's very important. And the reality for most business owners that have families is this. Sometimes your kids don't want to take over your business, but you still want them to be able to benefit from what you've built. I'll give you a perfect example. I spoke to a gentleman a couple of weeks ago. He's been a mechanic his whole life. And he's built a really nice business and he loves what he does. His kids were both in medicine. One was a PA and the other was going through medical school. They're not going to come and turn the wrench, right? They have their own path. He's not going to come in there and start changing tires and building engines and doing those things. But dad's built a great business and he's got a shop foreman and somebody that's worked there for a long time. So he wants that person to be able to have some equity when he's gone and be able to work and make it worth his while because he's been a part of it. But he also wants to structure it so that most of the membership shares do still go to his kids. So as this business continues, the legacy that he's built within his business, whether it's sold off to the new partner or it's sold off to an end buyer or it continues forward, still goes to benefit his kids because he had been operating this business for 40 years, and he had it before his kids were born and now his kids are growing up. And I'm sure he would have loved for his kids to, get involved in the business, but he's very proud of his kids to kind of build their own path forward and do what they're passionate about. Yeah. But still, he worked his butt off for 4 decades and he wants to make sure that that's taken care of moving forward for his kids if something happens to him. So it's always case by case. You can't take every business owner and fit them into the same exact box and say, hey, this is the box you're forced into. You got to look at what the business is, what the succession plan looks like. Is there somebody that's really lined up to take care of that business moving forward? If not, then that's a consideration you should potentially have.
I love that. I love that. I love that. So let's shift gears just a little bit and
Sure.
let's talk about this where you have the Nevada based trust,
Yeah.
right? So remember that, we cover all 50 states. You and I work together quite a bit on a lot of things that we cover. And we get that question. Tell me about this jurisdictional shopping and
Absolutely.
why is it so important to be able to do that? And one of the things that we teach on is look at the corporations and what they're doing and why they use, Delaware for this and Delaware for that, for the taxation benefits for big Fortune 500 corporations. But as a small home owner, and maybe someone that doesn't have a business, maybe someone that just have, land or rental properties and things of that nature. Maybe they just have children that they want to leave their assets to. What is the benefits of using the Nevada state law to use for my state if I'm located in Alabama or Georgia or Texas or Arkansas for that matter?
Great question. So most people don't. And the reason most people don't pick the best law is because they go into a law firm that's local to them, and that law firm practices law in that state. And that's what they're used to, and that's what they do. So most people end up, creating all of their estate plans based off of the place that they live in. The reality is you don't have to do that. The reality is that the full faith and credit clause of the US Constitution allows you to set up a trust under the status of a state, take it with you in any other state. Here's the other kicker is almost every state's probate code also allows you to bring in a trust into that state that's set up properly on the laws of another state. What you just said about Delaware is why a lot of corporations, Microsoft, I think their office is somewhere in Washington State, but in Delaware. Amazon, I don't know what state they're in, but incorporated in Delaware, because Delaware gives corporations some taxation and some law protections that gravitates them there, and they're able to do that. And you can do the same thing with your estate plan. The reality for us in the United States is, the temperature, whatever side of politics you're on is, people are a little bit negative about, how the U.S. does things. We have a beautiful set of laws that allows freedom of mobility around our country. I live in the Chicagoland area. The weather is awful. If I didn't have the blurred background, I turned it around, you'd be like, oh, that looks gloomy out here right now. If I had an Illinois-based trust and I wanted to go down to Florida or Texas to escape the weather and move, it would be a ridiculous thing for me to have to set up a trust every single time I moved. So this country allows us to move around, allows us to, utilize smart legal tactics. So if you have the ability to choose, and because we have digital estate plans that we operate in all 50 states, we pick the best set of laws. And Nevada has the best set of laws for clients. Allows a lot of flexibility with e-signatures, a lot of flexibility with funding, a lot of flexibility with, making changes quickly, easily, effectively. So if you have the pick of the litter, get the best law. I'll tell you personally, I had an Illinois-based trust. Now I have one that's based out of Nevada, and I have a e-state plan, a digital plan that's based out of Nevada, and it works in all 50 states.
I love that. I love that. And I have a two-part question here.
Sure.
So you moved all of your existing clients from that book trust to the digital trust. I heard you give a
All my clients
testimony
moving forward. So I have some past
Yes.
clients, obviously, that maintain that. But moving forward, any client that comes to me and says I want an estate plan, I take them through the same estate plan, digital estate plan that we have. And I'll tell you, people think digital is like LegalZoom, where you get this kind of crappy, small, not well thought out estate plan. The estate plans that we put together are at the same level or higher than any law firm you can go to. We have legal review calls. It's a robust plan that still has that amazing Nevada law in it, with the flexibility of being able to make changes from anywhere at any time without having to pay an hourly legal fee. Because I'll tell you, and this might make some past clients mad, but we'll go ahead and touch on it since you put me up there on this. The reality is if you've created a trust within a estate plan and you have it in paper format, the only way to change it is to go to that law firm, pay them an hourly legal fee, and make those changes. The sad reality for a lot of folks is it pushes them into being afraid of making changes because it costs money. So a lot of people get this revocable trust, where one of the real true benefits of a revocable trust is the fact that it's changeable, it's amendable. You can make changes, and you should. Your life's going to take you in different directions. But after going to a law firm 2 or 3 times and they charge you $1,000 or $1,500 to make changes, you're going to say, well, you know what? I'm good. I'm not going to make any changes. And then the trust doesn't really make sense for your life's needs. With what we do on the digital estate planning side, you can make the changes at any time from anywhere without paying an hourly legal fee. So it's a really nice thing for our clients to be able to do, because now that advantage of being able to make changes, everybody takes advantage of it. I'll tell you, last night, I probably made 25 changes on 25 different estate plans for clients. They got charged zero in hourly legal fees. Had they gone to law firms, they would have probably got charged collectively $20,000, but our clients paid $0 last night for me to change all those estate plans.
Yes, and thank you for that. I appreciate you being my attorney.
Yes, that's right. So every time you need a change, you just have to put in the notepad, you're looking for some changes, and we make those changes for you. It's revolutionary. And honestly, I didn't know this existed, for my past clients. I'm sorry when I say this now. When I was creating, the estate plans the way I was creating them, I didn't know this existed. So, even attorneys, a lot of times, and this is no disrespect to attorneys, because I was doing it, you get licensed in the state that you live in. You kind of have blinders on to look at your own law, because that's what you've been taught, either, through law school or through mentors or through your law firm. And that's the blinder you have on. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's better ways to do it now. Technology is better. Platforms are better. And I do things, I think, a better way now than I did, 2 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're looking out for the client, which is amazing, telling them that there's a better way to doing this than coming back, for changes that they could really probably do themselves and go into the system and just update or send a message to legal and say, hey, I just have a question on how to do this in our system, and then have a response back.
Listen, even getting advice and clarifications and questions answered, the reality for law firms is this: they're busy. So if you want to get a hold of an attorney and you have questions about your prior estate plan, good luck. You got to call the law firm. You got to schedule an appointment. You might have to pay a fee for that consultation. And it's slow. It's cumbersome.
Right.
We answer the questions the same day. You just let us know what your questions are. You let us know what your needs are. We answer them, and there's no charge to that. So, technology has been a blessing. I mean, it's a blessing and it's a curse in some ways. For what we do, it's a full blessing. It's fantastic. Yeah. It's a curse, if you think about AI and how it's going to take some jobs sometime soon. And you and I were talking about that a little bit. People have to be very careful about, making sure that they protect what they have now, because the world is changing, right? Technology is taking over, and there's going to be, I think, a massive layoff of a lot of different jobs. But for what we do in estate planning, the technology has really helped. It hasn't really hurt us.
So one of the things that we've been getting lately, since we've had these last 2 or 3 weeks of economic change, and maybe the last couple quarters, I would say, we've been getting requests from maybe those military people that are having to all of a sudden get up and move. Maybe they have to go deploy somewhere and things of that nature. And they know they haven't got this in place. Maybe they've used just the free things that they had offered to them when they were working on bases and things of this nature. But now they want to put something a whole lot more into detail. They maybe have a power of attorney, but they haven't been updated in a long time. Or they may have a will that is outdated. With this particular platform, we find that we do a lot of those Zoom calls, and we work with them to get their trust up and going. Is it easy for them to do it electronically? Like, we know they have the electronic signature. Is it easy for them to do it electronically when they're on the move like that? We have a lot of military-based families and contractors and things of that nature. But this makes it easy, right?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you to everybody who's listening, because I know you have a lot of servicemen and women who serve. Thank you for your service. I know right now, especially, it's the scariest time for them. And, they don't know if they're going to be deployed. Maybe they are getting deployed. And it's very scary. And, I appreciate your service. And I'm going to put this out there. If anybody's listening and they are going to be deployed, if you need help outside of normal business hours, you just let us know. We will help you outside of normal business hours. The really nice part of what we do, like you said, is we meet with the clients via Zoom or call. We can set everything up digitally. We can have everything ready for them to go. We actually do have a lot of men and women in service that use our platform because, husband could be, deployed, wife could be here, or vice versa. If wife is serving, husband's not. And we can get them both on a call. We can go through everything with them. We can make sure their entire estate plan set up, and we take care of everything for them. That's been a really neat part of working on this for me, is that we've been blessed enough to work with a lot of men and women who serve our country because it's flexible. And the nice thing is they could make the request at, 8 a.m., in the Middle East. I'm just going to put that out there because that's probably where, unfortunately, they will be. But, at 8 a.m. in the Middle East, we'll get it, and we can make that adjustment for them during that day. So by the time they go to sleep, their estate plan's adjusted. They don't have to call, schedule an appointment, hope they fall into the 9 to 5 that we have here, and wait. Because again, what they're doing is very dangerous. It's also very risky, and they take on a lot of risk for us. So if they request something done, they get it done the same day instead of having to wait. So yes, we are very sensitive to that. The founder and the CEO of our platform did serve. He was, I believe he served in Vietnam, actually. And he is very, very, very sensitive to it. We hold that part of what we do near and dear to us. We take care of everybody the same. We hold everybody near and dear to us. But if there's anything we can do quickly, rapidly, out of business hours for anybody who's serving, we're absolutely happy to do it. Proud to do it for them.
That's amazing. That's amazing. My father-in-law was a Vietnam vet. My husband served in the Navy. We're all military family as well ourselves. So we know already, the movement. Sometimes you have to get up and move and do what you have to do when you have to do it. But sometimes we're caught off guard that certain things have been updated or adjusted, or possibly they have that book trust and they know they never got it around to getting it updated before all this changed pace. And they say, okay, now I need to convert. Is it easy for us to convert from a book trust to a digital?
Very easy. I mean, as easy as it is setting one up. And a lot of times it depends on how much they did with that prior trust. Because if they haven't done anything, and the sad reality when you go to a law firm is, and you get an estate plan, they'll typically just give you the papers and they'll say, here you go. Here's the papers. Now you got to go and fund it and do, X, Y, and Z. The reality is 8 out of 10 people don't. They just take the stuff home and they park it in a filing cabinet or a desk drawer, and they've done nothing with it. So in those sorts of scenarios, a lot of times we'll start fresh. We'll give them a completely fresh plan. But if they have gone ahead and they've done some funding, they've done some things, we do what's called a restatement of trust. We'll modernize it. We'll give them the digital trust. We'll keep some of their wishes and wants however they want. If they want changes, we can make it at that time. Then again, we'll give them an avenue moving forward where they don't have to go and pay hourly legal fees and have difficulty in funding. So we work with a lot of people that have prior trusts that call us a little bit disappointed that, they just came to find out that even though they spent, $5,000-$6,000, their family's still probably going through probate. So they give us a call and they say, hey, can you help us do it a little bit better? And we do.
Wow. I have a client right now that just walked in last week, and he said, I wish I had known about you guys 2 weeks ago, because he had just bought the book trust, but then he wanted us to help him figure out how to fund it. I was like, whoa, you may have to talk back to the attorney you just got this from, because now he's at a loss situation where he's having to pay extra for the funding process and so forth. And he's like, whoa, I didn't realize that I've already paid 3 times over the amount that would normally cost to get this done. But now I have to try to figure out how to fund it, and it's taking them a long time. So I think what we have here, not only in saving the money in the end with the whole $300 to $500 per hour, it's just amazing itself. But then the back end support, and I have to give you guys compliment for your back end support that you guys offer our office. I truly appreciate you and thank you for that, because it's helpful. It helps a great deal.
Well, you're welcome. I think you guys, we're lucky to have, all of you smart advisors we work with to be able to give that back end support to. And what we're trying to build is a platform that takes really good care of our clients, but also our partners that are, bringing us clients and trusting us with their own clients and their family and their friends. Want to make sure that we're there to answer your questions as well. Because the more we can help educate you guys on the estate planning and law side, the better you're going to be for your clients as well. And you're obviously an expert in your space of finances and insurance and, retirement. But if we can give you a little more knowledge and back end support when it comes to the law and those sorts of things, we're always happy to do it.
I love that. I love that. Let's see here. Um, let's talk about one of the most outrageous stories that we've seen, right? Um, have you seen any situations where it was just way too late for them to get a trust?
Well, we do a lot of emergencies. So because we're so fast and we can, in an emergency setting, get everything done in the same day, we get a lot of people that reach out. Mom's going into hospice, dad's going into open heart surgery. I did one yesterday where somebody was having open heart surgery, and we got everything done within 24 hours for them. And, hopefully they come out of open heart surgery feeling just fine. But the reality is we took all that weight off their shoulders so they can go worry about medicine and take care of themselves without having to worry about the estate plan. But I'll tell you the wildest one we had, and I swear I get goosebumps every single time. I got long sleeves on, so you won't be able to see it. But this was probably about 6 or 7 months ago. It was a Friday at 5:30. I got an email from the CEO of our company, Gary, and he said, "Mo, there's an advisor that has a client that needs an emergency file, and they need it like right now." And we've had situations in the past where somebody will say it's an emergency file, but the client's going to Cancun. That's not really the same idea, right?
Right.
So I called this advisor and I said, "Hey, how bad is this?" And they said, "She is basically on life support, going to pass away, we think, any hour." And thankfully for her, she had already set up a POA to be her mom previously. So we were able to communicate with her mom to set this estate plan up. Now, mind you, this is Friday at 5:30. I just got in my car with my kids to take him to an appointment. So I called my law partner, Tim. I said, "Hey, Tim, I'm going to do the first to get on the computer, go through the rest of this estate plan, help them with the funding side, help the advisor who's physically going to the hospital to sign and notarize everything, get everything signed and notarized the right way so that this lady can have an estate plan." And Tim, bless him, he's been my law partner for a very long time. It was his anniversary night and he was at the park with his kids. And I said, "I hate to ask you to do me a favor on your anniversary, but I need some help." And he said, "You got it." So he pushed his anniversary dinner back, went home. I did the first half. He did the second half. Tim called me almost in tears when he finished. And this is where I get the goosebumps. I swear I just got him. He said, "Mo, I had just finished. They just signed and notarized everything, and she died on the phone. I was still on the phone when she died." And because he heard everything, he was on speaker with the advisor and the mom, and then everything happened. And, the hospital staff ran in and she just died. And he goes, "I've never felt anything like that before." And I said, "Did you get everything done?" He goes, "Yeah, we were done. We were just kind of wrapping up and talking. Everything was signed and notarized. The POA did it prior to the death." And well, that in and of itself was crazy. So we're blown away that we could help the family in such a short window, such a dire time. But the crazier thing was that the woman left behind 2 teenage kids, son and a daughter. Their dad, unrelated to the mom's passing away, died 5 weeks prior. The parents were divorced. They had just lost their dad. Now they just lost their mom within 5 weeks. Terrible for the kids, right? The dad had life insurance, we came to find out, but he had switched his life insurance policy to save a couple dollars, and he was not past the wait period. So the kids got $0 from dad's life insurance.
Oh,
And now the only assets, I got goosebumps again, the only assets we were able to protect were the assets that were now not going to go to probate that the mom had for the kids. And it was, we've done a lot of good in our legal career. I've been doing this for 16 years. I used to defend foreclosures. I used to, litigate and help families out. This was the most monumental thing done in such a short period of time to help a family out. And it was all because this platform and what we did was able to allow us to move quick and set these things up fast. even if I wanted to do this in paper format, even if I got everybody at my law firm all hands on deck to try to do what we had just done on that platform, we couldn't have done it. But that resonates probably as the craziest estate planning story I've ever had. I've had some crazy litigation stories, don't get me wrong. We get on another call if you want, give you some crazy ones there. But I've had clients get in fist fights outside, almost we have to break them up outside of courtrooms and crazy stuff. But this was the most touching and most monumental thing I've ever done in my law career. And again, it's how we do things. We if we think there's something we can do to help a family out, we as fast as we can, even in times where, Friday at 5:30, good luck calling a law firm, especially when one's in a car and the other has a, his anniversary and saying, hey, help me out within 2 hours of time, which is what we did. So that's my craziest one for you. I hope I never top it. I don't know if I can. I think I've peaked on the crazy story. I don't think I can top that, but we do the last minute hospice calls, surgery calls all the time. They're sad. I don't love doing those. I'm privileged to be able to help them in those moments. I feel very honored to be able to do my part to help them. I hate doing them because I'm always talking to somebody who's passing away. But if we can be a small part in taking a weight off their shoulder when they're going into that final stage, so they don't have to worry about finances, it's a privilege for me to do that.
Yes. See, you're not gonna make me cry on here today.
No, I mean, listen.
You're not gonna make me do it.
In silence for a minute there when he called me and said that to me, because I can't imagine what it would have been like for him to have to sit there and hear all that commotion, and then
Wow.
I'm crying.
Wow, that is powerful. I mean, wow. I mean, that is powerful. I've seen some stories. I've heard some. I've had situations where people have come sit here at my office and tell me about their situation with their parents that's dying or have been given to hospice and things of that nature. So and my dad went to hospice too 3 years ago. So I feel it when you say that, and it's tough when you have to deal with that part of life, right?
Yeah.
But one thing we know for sure that one day we're going to go home.
Yeah, everybody will.
Everyone will. At some point, look, we have to. Or we having all kind of people walk around here.
Yeah.
So we gotta go.
There's these guys that are saying they're doing these biohacks where you can live forever or live longer. It's like, I don't want to be 120 years old and barely able to move either. At some point, it's
Yeah.
but the sad reality for everybody is we don't know when that time will come.
Yeah.
And that's part of the beauty and charm of life, right? Sometimes people say, well, do you want to know when you're supposed to pass away? My answer is always like, no, I for sure don't want to know. Part of the beauty of life is we don't know, but
Right.
that can sometimes, again, be like my 103-year-old. And sometimes, unfortunately, it can be sooner. And I always tell my clients when we're talking, I try to make the conversations as fun as I can, as you've heard me on conversations with them. Try to give as many jokes as I can. But honestly, we're just planning for the worst case scenario. We're planning that, the bus hits us tomorrow and we're hoping it doesn't, but if it does, we've planned to make sure that everything's taken care of. And hopefully I tell my clients, I hope you live to 104 and beat my record. That's my hope for everybody. The reality is it's not like that for everybody, but most people set up their trust and they are with us for decades longer. Let's plan for the worst and then hope it never happens.
Absolutely. One of the things that we talk about is, as you know, I do a lot of things on financial literacy platforms, and sometimes we go to local colleges and we travel abroad and we talk to students. So you wouldn't believe some of the questions we get from just the students and saying, hey, how do I talk to my parents about this? Or how do I mention this to my mom and dad who plans to pass me their house one day? Or and they're in college, they're thinking long term of what's going to happen if it makes me think of years ago, when my son is 17 now, but years ago he said to me, he said, Mom, I'm an only child. What happens when you and dad are no longer here? I said, well, you'll always have brothers and sisters, because that's why you got good friends and colleagues that we brought you up with. So since you were 2 and 3 years old, so you're never by yourself, right? But at the same time, what happens to those assets if me and dad are gone yesterday?
Right.
If we leave yesterday, he's 17.
you got to do what I did. Maybe he's not going to go buy a red Ferrari and a bass boat and, like my son will, but the reality is you want to make sure you set them up for them to be able to be successful in life. And I think one of the things that, kids just, it's very hard for a kid to go to mom and dad and be like, Mom and Dad, I think you need an estate plan, right? I think it's a really difficult thing. I think if you die, you need an estate plan. I think that's a real hard conversation to have. But I think it's, asking the question of, what happens, if God forbid something happened to you, what do you want me to do with your legacy? Just maybe talking through things. I'm in my 40s and, my dad is very ill, and my dad and I talk a lot, and he's my best friend. And, I know of, what his wishes are for his legacy moving forward. And a lot of times, although that's a difficult conversation to have when you're 19, 20 years old, as you get older, right, and you have your own kids, when you're a kid, you think of your parents, you're like, oh, they don't know anything. And I look at, I'm probably with my 13 and 16-year-old, I'm probably in that phase, right? Like,
Yeah.
he knows everything. I'm like, yeah, I know way more than you guys do. But I remember thinking about my parents. And now I look at my dad, like, all that wisdom, is wisdom that I'm trying to carry with me.
Yeah.
For my son. If I could be half of the dad my dad was and learn half the things he's learned, be able to pass that along, that's important. I think if you ask your parents, what would you want me to be able to pass along? I think that's an organic way to lead into that conversation. But yeah, a lot of times mom and dad should sit down and talk to somebody and should plan, because, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds of like where the world is going, but the reality is it's really hard for your 17-year-old and my 16-year-old and kids that are 19, 20 years old today to figure out what to do next, because the financial landscape is changing so much. AI is here, and we're dealing with a lot of AI integration into our company. So I think about this a lot, and I talk to a lot of people. But AI is going to take a lot of jobs, right? And that's going to happen, and there's nothing we're going to be able to do about it. And when I talk to young people, I say, there was, and this is more, I guess we're getting out of estate planning, but I think it's important for those that are listening. Back in the day, you used to become very successful if you had two things: hard work, and you learned your craft, right? You get good knowledge, you work your butt off, you're going to be successful.
Right.
Part of the problem is the robot's going to work harder than you, and it's going to know more than you. So it's going to take a lot of jobs, right? Mine included. Like, attorneys are soon to be obsolete, right? But I'm far enough in my career that I've built some wealth and I can do some things. So you really have to stand out. You have to extra work hard. You have to extra learn knowledge, because what you used to be able to hire a team of 10 people to do, you might only hire 2 people, right, to do. So you got to be in that top 20%. So you got to work your butt off. But the reality is the money that mom and dad have accumulated for you, now bringing it back to estate planning as your legacy, is going to have to be intelligently invested. Because if your income potential decreases over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, if you're, somebody in your 20s, because there's going to be some people that are going to take off and excel. But the reality of the world will be that the middle class and the middle 50, 60, 70% is probably in some trouble. But if mom and dad do a good job of, leaving the funds behind where you can invest those funds, well, you'll leapfrog yourself a little bit further ahead of the line there, and you'll have some smart investments. But if you blow it all on a Ferrari and a bass boat, or, mom and dad don't protect it and it goes improperly to taxes or goes to legal fees or goes to, court costs, then you're actually not allowing those kids to have that, jump start and that head start they should have. So I think it's really important to think about that. I think about my 16-year-old all the time now. My 1-year-old in 17 years, who knows where the world will be? We'll figure it out, 10 years from now. But all those kids that are 16, 17, 18, even 20, 21, 22 years old, you have to really think about that. You have to think long game, where am I going to be? Because the world is changing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And to be able to say they get it at this point in their lives.
Yes, very important.
Or listen, it divides up over a certain amount of years in their lives.
I joke about my kids, but at 18, I would have bought a red Ferrari too if I came into money, right? So no, it's no knock on the younger kids for spending money. I don't think I matured till I was, probably 30, but the reality is that you can control how and when that money goes to them. And then if let's say you pass away, if I pass away tomorrow at the age of, and my kid is 1, my investments by the time he's 21, even if the job market changes, are going to take care of him. In 20 years' time, my investments will have created him a nice life. And even for my older kids, if my money gets invested, my life insurance gets invested, and that's done appropriately, and it continues to grow for them, then you know what? Because I did my best to build a legacy, in 10 years, it's going to really take care of them really nicely. And parents need to start to think about that a little bit. Unless you are not working for your loved ones, you should really think about that. And I'll tell you, in 16 years of doing this and tens of thousands of clients across different platforms and, different ways of doing law, I've only ever had one person say to me that they have nobody they love to leave their money behind for. And it doesn't have to be your kids. It could be your cousins. It can be your nephews and nieces. It could be somebody. And I always ask people a couple questions when it comes to, do you need an estate plan? It's, do you have over $100,000 of net worth? Most people say yes, especially with the equity of their home. Question number 2 is very easy. Is there anybody you love and care about? Almost everybody says yes. One time in 16 years, somebody said, no, there's nobody I care about. And I said, well, shit. Excuse my French. I said, I don't know what to say to this lady. And I said, well, okay. Estate plan might not be for you if there's anything to leave it behind for. And I'll tell you, she was a very successful writer. So she actually had a lot of money, but the reality for her was she wanted to leave money behind for charity. So
I was about to say that. Yeah.
That still requires some planning, because the court's not going to just leave it to charity. Okay. So, that still required some planning, but one time. Everybody else can find somebody they love that they want their hard work to go to, whether it's your kids, your grandkids, your niece, your nephew, a charity. If your entire life's effort needs to go to, an anti-cruelty society, a cancer charity, the armed forces, something. There's somebody you love or something you love, you should leave your legacy for.
Absolutely. And we get that request all the time. When we build out the living revocable trust, there's an option there to say, hey, I want this to go to this charity. We've had clients that bring their whole list of charities that they want to support, their fraternities or sororities, or maybe their local churches or whatever, and build it out that way, that they want it to be that way.
Partially, even more than once a week, I talk to a client that's leaving stuff behind to loved ones and some to charity too. Being charitable is a great thing to do in your life. You can do it during your life, but you can also do it after your life too. And absolutely, I'd say more than once a week, I talk to somebody who within their estate plan has some level of charity involved.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing all this wisdom with us today.
Happy to do it. I'm excited. I'm always excited to be on with you, and always excited to come back and talk to people and give them advice. I try to keep it in the estate planning realm, but I'll tell you, I used to coach and train 60 salespeople. I had a pretty big team. And a lot of my one-on-one training and coaching was not just to teach them to be successful in the business, but to try to teach them to, become successful as people. So I think what you're doing is really awesome. Being inspired to be great is a really cool thing. And always happy to be a part of this with you.
Thank you so much. Look, and then he knows my brand. You know what? You're trying to be on my good side, Mo.
Listen, you do great work with your clients. We love working with you. And I think the idea that you're putting forth to help educate, people of all ages, not just, people who have families, but the youth as well is so important, because I do think that is lost in education right now. I think education, it's tricky. I have a doctorate, right? You get a law degree, you got to go through, undergraduate, you got to go through law school. So I am a person who went through school. And by the way, I was not always a straight A student. You don't have to be that to end up being successful. I went to, the worst law school in the Chicagoland area. I became very successful because I worked really hard, right? People are afraid of saying that. Chicago's got some great schools. Mine wasn't the best one, but I worked my butt off, and, I created a lot of success for myself because education doesn't always stop at your schooling. And what you're doing to teach people sometimes is even more important than, what they're learning. At the end of the day, I was very bad at math after multiplication tables. Third grade math was where I excelled. After third grade, my math career went down. But I got to, this is good math for me. I don't need to worry about learning algebra anymore. Now, if you want to go be an engineer, maybe you have to, but the robot's going to do that job soon too. But they teach high level math, but they don't teach you how to create wealth. They don't teach you about estate planning. They don't teach you about an IRA, a 401k, what that means. They don't teach you about real estate investing. So the fact that you're spending the time to do that is so valuable. And if you're listening, um, listen to people like Demetrius. Go and learn these things, because sooner or later, all of these little bits of knowledge are what's going to set you apart from everybody else that just doesn't have that knowledge.
Yeah, you're so right about learning some things like out of school
Yeah.
that you learn. I mean, 30 years into financial literacy and working in the banking industry, a lot of things that I learned outside of my degrees, I learned in the field.
Yeah. Yeah. In life. I mean, I'll tell you, law school doesn't teach you how to be a lawyer. Not at all. I mean, you get a law degree. It doesn't teach you anything about really practicing law. You learn it on the job. You learn it with experience. Medical school maybe teaches you a little bit. I hope. But that's why they have residency, right? Doctors
Yeah.
leave medical school and then they have to go learn on the job. You don't
Yeah.
want to go with your medical student doing your surgery until he's gone through residency, right? So, you got to learn after school as well. And the stuff that they don't teach you in school, seek out people like Demetrius, who's teaching these things. Listen to smart people. And I would say also, you teach it really well. Careful. I asterisk this with careful about who you listen to on social media. There's a lot of BS gurus out there. I won't name one. I'm not a big social media arguer. It's not my style. I got into one with somebody who had 2 million followers on social media, and he put out this clickbait garbage. And I commented in there, I said, it's clickbait garbage. And he attacked me and he said, you must have chat GPT'd your response. And I said, no, you chat GPT'd your video. I'm an attorney. You're not. And then I got a lot of likes, I'm not a big social media debater, but the reality, unfortunately, on social media is that anybody can have a platform. Anybody can say whatever they want. And a lot of it's misinformation. You teach the stuff the right way. So if you are listening, also go out there and learn, but be careful who you learn from, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Our access to information today is more than it's ever been. You and I are old enough where when we needed something, we have to go to the library or have an encyclopedia and flip through it.
Yeah.
In 2 seconds, the robot in your phone called ChatGPT can tell you an answer to something or teach you something. So the access to information is vast and you can learn so much. But also because of that, there's a lot of misinformation out there. So you just got to be smart.
That is so true. That is so true. Thank you so much, Mo. Listen, you have given us a wealth of knowledge today, bro.
Wonderful.
And I love the fact that you're so transparent. Thank you for your transparency.
Of course.
We thank you so much for your support to working with us. Thank you for your encouragement. Truly, I do what I do because I love it. I love to help people. I want to see them do better and have better. And so this is sort of like a purpose-driven journey for me. So the collaboration of working with you guys was just right on time to bring this. I'm so excited with so much more we got coming up together. Some more things to share with you in the weeks to come, but I'm excited about it. So thank you so much for taking out your time today, because I know, you were so hard to find on. I'm like, Lewis, good. Let me get the Mo. You got 5 minutes? No, I need.
Anytime you need me, I'm there. I'm thank you for having me on. I appreciate that your mission is to teach people and give them education. And anytime I can be a part of that, I'm happy to.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Guys, listen, I'm going to tell you this. Listen, you guys have had the opportunity to listen to greatness today. And I'm not talking about myself. Okay. I know I'm inspired for greatness. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about Mr. Modaka. When he can come on and talk to us about these things about your estate planning and how to do it and who to listen to and what avenues are important for you, things to be mindful of, the easiness in getting it done, how to save you money. We touched on so much today on what he can do and what we can do collaboratively to help you hit the goals and to target those things that you are been waiting to get done. Take that stress off your shoulders to get those things done and have a working team to do it for you. I'm so excited that we had the opportunity to bring this to you today, to be able to tell you more about your options, and sometimes to also just bring back the layers of what you thought you knew but didn't quite know the answer to. You was looking for the right type of information. So today, I think you got it. Today, I think you got it with Mr. Modaka. He actually laid down this information as a litigation attorney, a real estate attorney, have that history in his back pocket, and to also have getting all things together with your living revocable trust, your power of attorneys, knowing the law, knowing how it applies to your situation. We are just excited and thankful to have him here today. So I want to say thank you guys for tuning in with us on this returning of the Financially Fit Fridays. Who knew? We're going to hear so much today and to learn so much from him today. So stay tuned for next Friday as we're bringing on yet another expert in the industry of financial literacy. And we're going to touch on some other areas that may be on your mind that you hadn't thought of and possibly just need some answers to. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Once again, this is Demetris Curry, Generational Wealth Strategist. We are coming to you with Inspired for Greatness, sponsored by W Squared AV Talk. Talk to you guys next week.